Hey there, Mike Robinson with BlackHawk Paramotor USA for another tips and tricks video. Today's video is how to install a CHT or cylinder head temperature gauge on your paramotor. The instructions that you will see here today will work for pretty much any paramotor. Okay, the tools that it takes to do this are really quite simple. Let me show you what you need. First off, any drill with a 1/4-inch bit. Spark plug removal socket, an 11mm wrench for one of the HE motors, and a good pair of dikes or cutters. Last but not least is your zip ties. I prefer the really small ones. The installation of the CHT or cylinder head temperature gauge is really easy, so don't let it freak you out for some reason. And as always, if you have any questions, just give us a call. First thing to do is remove the spark plug cap. Just lay it off to the side, and then you want to remove the spark plug itself. The spark plug is going to get a little sensor placed underneath it. That's why we're removing the spark plug. The next thing to do is remove the bonnet or the cooling shroud. The model that we're using today for this tips and tricks video is a Kestrel with a 125 mounted to it. For those of you who have 125s or 90s, this installation is exactly the same. But reality is it's very basic. Basically, you're putting a sensor underneath the spark plug and routing the wires, or the wires, sorry, in such a way as it is neat and clean and out of the way. Very easy to remove this bonnet. As I've stated in some previous videos, if you're going to install this on an older engine, look for any cracking that you might have. And also, now's a great time to check the fan. What you want to do is just check your fan blades and make sure that there's none that are gouged or missing. With the spark plug out, it's quite easy just to grab your pull starter and turn it and check it. Also check for any possible deformation or cracking in the shroud that surrounds the fan. New unit, obviously it's going to look great. Okay, so I've unpackaged the CHT gauge, and here's the sensor. Sensor's 14mm, same as most plugs. If you have a smaller plug, just let us know and we can order you the proper size sensor. Make sure that the plug fits inside the sensor nice and neatly. That one fits well. Okay. Set the spark plug to the side. Now comes a little bit of a tricky part. This sensor does not quite fit within the cavity of this cylinder head. That's because some of these fins, two in particular, need to be ground back so that this sensor can fit back over the spark plug hole. What we're going to do is, with that 1/4-inch drill bit, we're going to grind back a couple of the fins so that this fits over the hole. There's two additional things that I didn't mention, and I'm sorry, that you're going to need. Blue tape or masking tape, I prefer the blue, it's like a painter's tape, and a vacuum. What I'm going to do is I'm going to place some of this tape over the spark plug hole so that when I grind the head, I'm not going to get any of those shavings down inside the motor. If you do get a few of them in there, don't panic, the vacuum will take care of that. I don't like to use a blower because it can distort the tape or pull the tape off and subsequently get shavings down inside the motor. So just a vacuum with a little hose works perfect. Try not to add too big of a piece of tape because your drill bit can grab the tape and pull the tape off as well. So I try to fit it as close to the hole as possible. I'm going to grind this side. This is the side that I like to grind on the HE motors. So I'm placing that tape and making sure it's nice and sticky. That one went really well, no big deal. Next thing you're going to do is take your bit, 1/4 inch, and I'm just going to grind the metal back by taking the drill and going up and down and around. It might take a little bit. You can also use a 5/16, but I use a 1/4 inch first and then the 5/16 if I don't quite get it. Kind of like your dentist grinding your teeth, I guess. You're not hurting anything on the motor. You're not changing the cooling of the motor or anything like that. I'm just grinding some aluminum back. Make sure you go down far enough. You can actually go into the cylinder head, which is above the combustion chamber a little bit. It's not going to hurt a dang thing. That looks really good. I've not pulled off the blue tape yet, but do take the sensor and fit it in there. You can see the indentation over the tape, or underneath the tape, so to speak. That looks great. I actually have very few shavings in here. Pull the tape up carefully. Okay. And discard the tape. The next thing I'll do is install the sensor on the spark plug. Now we're going to just double check to make sure that sensor fits. As you can see, that sensor fits right within that cavity perfectly. Now I'm going to take the spark plug and screw it in. Do make sure that it fits really well. If you have to take a Dremel tool, for instance, and open up that 14mm hole in the sensor a little bit so it fits better for you in and out of the spark plug, do so. It's worth it. Sensor is now installed. As you can see, this is really quite simple, and actually it's pretty cool because you can be flying along and see what your cylinder head temperature is, and also when you land it shows you what your max was. So if you're not paying attention to it all the time, when you land you can tell what your max climb out temperature was. Kind of neat. Next thing we're going to do, tighten the spark plug. Remember to tighten it quite well because you are having to compress against not only the gasket for the spark plug, but now you kind of have another gasket with that sensor being underneath there. Okay. Next thing we're going to do is install the cooling bonnet. You can install the bonnet prior to putting the spark plug and everything back on. I typically don't. I just run it through the bonnet and then install the bonnet over the cylinder head. Do make sure that the bonnet is covering the fan in its entirety. There is a possibility of you installing one side of the bonnet within the fan cavity. Your cooling won't be as good as it was prior. Next we'll install the nuts on here. Remember to not over tighten these nuts. It is just fiberglass. Okay, we've got the bonnet on. As I mentioned earlier, don't over tighten these. Just make sure that the bolt is through the nylon. Next, go ahead and reinstall your spark plug. Now, we're in the final phase. We're going to install the cylinder head temperature gauge along our throttle cable. As always, I'd like to see you run the wiring as neat and as cleanly as possible. Nothing gaudy, nothing out there that can get caught on something. I've run this cable behind the spark plug cable, and I'm just going to set it down right here and walk to the front of the machine. This is an extension that we can supply in 1 foot, 2 foot, and 4 foot increments. So if you need a longer extension to mount your cylinder head temperature gauge in a custom location or just somewhere else for that matter, let us know. We can send you a longer extension. This is where we like to have ours. Right now I'm making sure that the line is not really taut, and I'm going to put a small zip tie right around the extension here and hold it in place. How I like my temperature sensor mounted is right underneath my arm. In other words, my armpit. I like to be able to hold my control and look down, and I can see my temperature. The way these are set up, you are going to have to twist it like so that as you're flying you can actually read that temperature gauge. So now that you see I've turned it, I've kept the line nice and neat. I'm going to put a zip tie here and one here to secure it. Remember, make sure that you tilt it. Experiment a little bit. In other words, don't tighten these too much yet. Experiment actually holding your throttle, sitting in the seat, and experiment with looking down so that you get the proper angle. As I mentioned, set it up to where you can still twist the gauge itself, sit in the paramotor, and act as though you're flying. I want to be able to look down and see my temperature. 88 degrees. Still 88. Pretty cool, huh? Now you're going to tighten it up, and your installation is now complete. Go for a flight. Check it out. It's pretty cool. Thank you for watching another BlackHawk Paramotor tips and tricks video. I hope you found it really informative. Please, on our BlackHawk YouTube channel, make comments. Give us some likes. If you didn't like it, give us a thumbs down. But make a comment. If you have any suggestions whatsoever as to what we could do for you for tips and tricks, let us know. Thank you for watching.